All right, we're back. We are COMP125 in the summer 2018 semester at Centennial, and we are week 2, part 2 of our broadcast. We just stopped talking about assignment number 1. The details are up online, and please see lesson 2, part 1 for the details for assignment number 1. And now we're going to get into live coding. So people are new. I see new faces. So things that we talked about last week, I can't repeat all of them, but I will go through the assignment or parts of the assignment this week as I go. I'm going to kind of add new parts to it. There's also some PowerPoint stuff I want to handle today. So I want to talk about a couple things. But in this course, just like we talked about in week 1, we're talking about JavaScript. So just a little bit of PowerPoint stuff. I know people hate PowerPoint stuff, but hey, I'll put it up just a little bit. So when we talk about naming, one thing to talk about. You want all the PowerPoints to be updated a couple of days before the class so you can look at it ahead of time? Do you have the book? Do you have access to the book? Do you have access to the book? Then this is from the book. So read chapter 1. Every week is a different chapter. So next week is chapter 3. So read chapter 3 in advance. No problem. So yes, so we're talking about JavaScript. And last week we did this little example. Remember, for people who are not here, please join me on Slack. If you haven't joined me on Slack, please do that. You can find the link for Slack, the invite, up on eCentennial, right? So you'll be able to join me on Slack. But one of the other links that I've given you is GitHub. So if you look at my GitHub under Centennial College, there are all the examples for what we're talking about are up on GitHub. One of the ones we talked about last week was lesson 1A. We also are going to be using Visual Studio Code in this course, like I talked about last week. So for those people who weren't here, please go to this link, right? So lesson 1A. And if you look at Slack, so if we look at our Slack link, again, I apologize for people that were here, but I got to cover some people that weren't here for administrative reasons. Like, for example, they weren't here because, you guys weren't here because, you couldn't, connect to class. Please, again, comments inside of our main general, channel are not for you to say hi and say how you doing. If you want to do all that kind of stuff, that's done in random. So if you want to put some random hellos, cat videos and dog videos and anything you like, as long as it's clean, right? You can put it in random. Developers for some code examples and that kind of thing. Right now it's empty, right? You can. If you get in, if you try and access developer, you can access it. So that's one. You can kind of totally say hi on random if you want, or add some other things in here. But I will be sharing important links. One of the important links I shared with you last week was a couple things. One of them was this desktop app that we talked about briefly, desktop.github.com. If you don't want to use command line, you can certainly use this. And we also did lab 1, and then there was some other stuff. Here's lesson 1A. I had one of our friends, Riaz, he pinned up COMP125 S2018 lesson 1A. That's the one I'm looking at right now. I'm going to download this one. This is the one right here. I'm going to download this one onto my desktop as if I didn't have it. Okay, so we're going to start from this one. Okay, so I've just downloaded it into my downloads folder. So again, it's under downloads. And what I recommended was to export this as an example or extract it under using 7-zip, right? I think it's a really good standard zip archive. I'm just going to cut this whole archive here, and I'm going to go to my desktop right now and paste it. So here it is. That's how I would get it. It could be named something like this. Notice there's a file inside the file. This is the file that I'm getting from my master page. All you really need is this. You don't need this part because there's 2 folders, one that's empty and one that's the outer folder. And the reason why I got that is because when I downloaded it, it knows that I already have that zip file and created a copy. And that's why I got this. But all you need is this one, okay? So notice that it says COMP125 S2018 lesson 1A. But I'm going to be basing my stuff off 1A and make 2A, right? So we're going to do this. We're going to say COMP125. I'm going to rename this thing to lesson 2A. And 2B is going to be tomorrow if we can, if we need to. All right, there it is. 2.8er. There we go. Even better. All right, so there's 2. And I'm going to be kicking off Visual Studio Code. Here's Visual Studio Code. Again, I'm not using Visual Studio for this course. I showed you guys how to do that on last Wednesday, but only as a backup for those people who really don't like editors and they want to use Visual Studio, right? So here's Visual Studio Code. And notice what I did was I dragged and dropped my folder onto Visual Studio Code. That's what I did. And that's why I have this. I have this start page too, which I don't need. But what it does show me is a couple things. I have my content, scripts, about, and index. Hey, where's my assets folder? Here's a question I asked last week. How come I don't have my assets folder? Remember, I created 3 folders last week. I created a content, scripts, and assets folder. And I put it up on GitHub, but I don't have assets. Yeah. There's nothing in the folder, like I said last week. So if there's nothing in the folder and you put it up on GitHub, it doesn't keep the folder. It just discards anything that has nothing inside of it. If there's no content, it won't put it up on GitHub. So if you really want something to go up on GitHub, put something empty in there, right? So I want to make a folder because maybe we'll put something up here today. So I'll make a new folder called assets. Okay. And hey, this is a good start. So I want to put this up on GitHub, right? Now there's a couple ways to do this. One way I showed you guys last time was command line, and I also used everything here inside my Visual Studio Code. I use this little GitHub link, if you will. This is for Git and version control. Notice it says source control up here, right? In fact, Visual Studio Code allows me to do a lot of this stuff through the application. Today, we're not going to do anything through the application. We're going to do everything on command line, so it helps Riaz and other people who aren't comfortable with command line. All right. Now, there's 2 ways to get to the command line here. One is you can make your own. You just can go here and just type in CMD on a Windows machine, right? And then you're good to go. If you're a Mac, you can press Command Space and type terminal, and it'll bring up your terminal, right? And in command line, what I want to do, for me to find my folder that I want to, I can, as an example, I can type the command CD, which means change directory. That's the Windows command. That's the DOS command. And then left click and drag your folder into your command prompt, and then press enter. And now you're there. That's one way of doing it. So now I've navigated to my folder on my desktop. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is through Visual Studio Code, which is okay to do as well. And I'm here in Visual Studio Code. I right click down in here, and I get this little menu, and then I can just, show and open in command prompt, which is right here. And when I do that, a command prompt will appear right here, which is kind of all one screen to show everything. I'm going to use this because this is kind of like all one, so you guys can see everything. And then, I won't have to switch back and forth too much. If I do, it's only because there's not enough space. Like, this is a really long path. And sometimes what ends up happening is I only have like this much space to show you the commands. So sometimes I switch back and forth between this one and this one, only just for space. But for today, I'll try and hook and stay inside here. So I'm setting this. I'm assuming that you've never done this before, and I'm setting this up from scratch. I'm setting up my GitHub. For one thing, remember, GitHub is a version control system that we use. There's 3 reasons why we use GitHub. We use it for backup, version control, and collaboration. If I'm going to have any kind of short answer or something like multiple choice, like Riaz asked earlier on my test, that definitely will be a question on your test, because I've told you like 10 times what GitHub is for, right? So backup, version control, or revision control, and collaboration or communication. All right, so yeah, so I'm going to do my Git command. I'm going to set up my local repository. So I'm going to do Git init. That's my first command. If I can type properly today, and it's not happening somehow, my brain is short-circuiting. Git init. Git init. This first command initializes my repository locally. It does not initialize anything remotely, right? There's 2 parts of version control for people who weren't here last week, right? One part is our local server. And again, if you watch the videos, I go into more detail last week. And one part is on the cloud, GitHub. And if you don't have a GitHub account, for people who were not here last week, please sign up with GitHub today, all right? Because we're going to be using GitHub throughout the semester.
So GitHub.
Yes. Collaboration. All right, those 3 things. So, sorry, you were asking?
Actually, this initializes the current selected.
This creates a hidden to be clear, .git folder inside the folder that this is pointing to. So for example, this folder is pointing to C:users, me, desktop, COMP125, S2018, lesson 2A. That's the folder that I'm looking at right now. When I do a git init, it places a new subfolder inside this folder, which is hidden, called .git. That's what it's named. You can't see it unless I open it up like I did earlier. Okay, and if I press git init and press enter, it initializes your repository. Now, this will not work unless you have Git installed properly on your machine. All right, so your machine in front of you must have Git installed properly. And I went through that whole process last week where you do it, where you go to git-scm.com and install Git locally. All right, so now I've initialized my Git repository, which is inside for this particular folder. When I do that, immediately you notice on the left, I have this little symbol that comes up that shows that I have 26 files that I'm inside my folder. All right, now I'm going to go git add dot. Git add dot is the second command. There's a few commands here. Git add dot, what it does is it basically adds everything, all my files and subfolders recursively, right, from this from the folder that I'm doing it in, right, into something called the staging area. This is new from last week, right? I didn't talk about this last week too well. The staging area, it's almost like, hey, I'm about to put this to make a commit, and I want to flag all these files as things that I want to commit, that I want to include in my commit. And so that's called the staging area. I haven't made the commit yet. I'm just saying I want to include all these files in my commit. And remember, what's a commit from last week? How can you explain or describe a commit, John? What's your description of a commit? One word, or maybe two. Come on. Snapshot. It's a snapshot, right? It's like I'm taking a picture of my files, a snapshot of my files at this particular moment in time. That's what a commit is, right? And the commit itself. So now I've just done git add dot. That's what I've done here. Now it's a lot of stuff. I'm going to clear my screen. The command for clearing my screen in Windows is CLS. For Linux and Mac machines, it's clear. Type in the word clear and enter. All this does is just clears my terminal so I can keep typing so you guys can see. So the third command is git commit, right? But you can't just end it there. You have to name the commit. You have to name that snapshot. It's almost like I want to attach a name to my snapshot of my files, right? So git commit -m for message. That's what that switch is. -m is a switch on the command line. That's what we call them, switches. Something past the dash, minus or -m, dash something else, those are called switches. So -m is the switch that says for message, and then in quotations the name or message that I'm associating with this snapshot. Okay, which is normally there's two conventions for the first commit. It's either first commit or initial commit. Those are the two commits we need. The two naming conventions we use. So I'm going to call this initial commit. All right, so this is the third command in its complete form. And then we press enter. And what it does, right, is it commits all the files that I flagged in my staging area to the first snapshot or commit that's inside my Git repository. So now I've created something called a baseline, right? I have a baseline commit. My first commit is the baseline. And then I can compare everything I add, all my new files that I add, with the baseline commit to see if there's any changes. Hence, version control. Okay, that's what we do with that. Okay, so those are the three commands that I've used. Now notice that I don't have any other signs over here. There's nothing that says that there's anything else left to do, right? However, there's more stuff to do here. And if I clear the screen again, I need to set up the other side now. So this is all my local stuff. So locally, I've created my commit. I've created my Git repository, and now I'm going to do it remotely. Remotely means I'm going to connect to GitHub. So in order for me to do that, I need to go to GitHub. Here's GitHub. This is my account, Centennial College, just by chance, right? And I'm going to go to my account page. This is my account page. And there's two options. I can click this plus, or I can click this new, one of these two things. And if I click new, then if you notice that I have my owner, the owner says this is the account. Usually this is the account name. And then the repository name. And usually I try and match the repository name with my folder or my project. So two options, this one or new are the two options, right? Summer camp.
Meaning that the files are still not gone over to.
We haven't even made a repository to accept the files yet. Okay, so let's make this new or the plus, depending on what you want. And now I'm going to call it COMP125 S for summer 2018. And then it's lesson 2A, which is what we want to make. This is a new repository I'm making. I'm making a new container. A repository on Git is just an empty container. It's not like Dropbox or Google Drive or OneDrive or anything like that. Okay, it's not like you have direct file access. It's not like that at all, right? Okay, so this is just the named option. Now there's two options. You can choose a public or private. For private repositories, you must have access to do so, permission, or you must have a paid account. If you're a student, I talked about it last week, you can get the student GitHub pack, which I recommend, and allows you unlimited private repos with GitHub, right? If you're not or you don't care, in this particular case, I really don't care because I'm using a public repository. I'm sharing it with you guys, right? Then choose public.
Is there any size limitation?
No. Initialize this repository with a README. I'm not going to do that right now. And I'm not going to add a git ignore or a license because I'm not sharing any new software with you. Okay, and then create repository.
There might be some limit.
No,
size.
There's no limit.
No.
No limit.
1 gig, 2 gig.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
I've put up Unity projects that are 3 gig, right, on GitHub, and Unreal projects that are 5 gig, right? So there's no limit. The only limit is the size of the file. Each file cannot be more than 100 megabytes itself. That's the limit. So you can't have like files that are like 500 megabytes, like one file. Won't be allowed. And actually, there's other ways of doing it too. You can actually make large files available on GitHub, but in our course, we're not going to ever do that, right? Okay, so we've got this new page. This page basically shows us that we have a new Git repository that's empty, and it gives us some instructions, potential instructions that we can use. And we can do all of these things here. Last week, I copied these two files here, and I copied and pasted them into my command prompt. This week, I'm going to do a thing a little bit different. I'm going to copy this. This is what we need. GitHub.com, Centennial College, COMP125, S2018-lesson2a.git. And this is called the Git URI. URI, those 3 letters, right? This is the Git URI right here. And you can copy it by pressing this little button right here. Copy. I'm going to go back to my project, right? And I'm going to create the remote longhand, all right? So it goes like this. Git remote add. We have to name the remote. The remote, typically the names of the remote, that's the connection. A remote is just the connection from your local repository to the cloud. That's all it is. We're just naming that connection right now. And the name is origin. That's the typical name. And then if I right click, right, it's the path to GitHub, right? So that's the complete line, git remote add origin and this. And if you look back up online, it's exactly that. Git remote add origin, blah, blah, right? And if I press enter, we added our first remote. So that's how we add a remote, git remote add. Remember that the way Git works is we have, we can actually use verbs, right? Like add, and we're saying, hey, look at the remote. I want to add a remote, git remote add. Now you might want to say something like, maybe it'd be better if we get to use something like git add remote, right? But that's not how it works. Git remote add.
Meaning there, this generates a kind of like
this creates a connection. So if I just type git remote now, you can see that I have a remote called origin. I can have multiple remotes. That means I can have multiple connections. What if I wanted to share my files on Bitbucket, which is another service, a Git service, or GitLab, or somewhere else that supports Git? I can have multiple remotes here, right? Not only show one, and I can name them different things. For example, I could have called this GitHub, right? So, but for now, the typical convention is calling it origin. Okay, the origin remote is how we say it. All right, now I want to push, right? I want to push my files to Git. It's almost like uploading. Push means like in your mind, I want to upload my files to Git or GitHub. So it's git push, right? Right? And then it's -u for unconditional. That's the unconditional switch. Origin, master. Okay, so what does this mean? I want to push all my files to the origin remote into the master branch. That's what it means. Because we talked about branching last week really briefly. Branching is like there's one continuous development branch. That's typically the master branch, and you can have sub-branches of that when you're developing. Enter. And then when you do that, if everything goes well and if you've configured GitHub correctly, it might ask you to log in, right? And if, for example, it doesn't here, I've pushed everything. If you've configured your local repository properly, or your local Git with git config, it knows who I am, and I've pushed everything to the master branch. Okay, so those are the commands, and there's a couple new ones. I just went over these ones. Git remote. One more thing. If I go clear again, if I go git status shows me the status of my current branch. It shows me that my working tree is clean. That means like I'm not behind or ahead of my remote. I can also do git log, and git log shows me the last and all of the commits that I've done with that particular. Let me clear it up so you can see it better. Git log shows a couple things. One, it shows me that the head of my folder is pointing to the master branch, and we have an origin master connection. Origin being the remote, master being the master branch. Okay, that's what this does. So this is the commit number. This commit number is generated automatically by Git, and it's based on a couple things. The time, I'll get to you in a second. The time, it's going to also base it on the computer, on GitHub, and a bunch of other things. And it creates this hash. That's what this is called. Yes? When you're continuously developing and you do a git fetch, there's another command. You can do a git fetch, which doesn't actually download anything, but checks to see what's happening on your remote. And then you can see if you do a git status after a fetch, you can say, oh, God, I'm behind, right? And someone else has added some other things, or I'm ahead. I've added some new commits, and I want to push to my remote.
This corresponds to the local folder.
The local folder, and it's pointing to the master branch. Okay, now, so this is what git status does, or git log. If I look online, so git log shows me the commit and the commit number, which is a generated hash. That's what it's called. If I look online and if I refresh, this is my GitHub repo, right? You can see that I also have one commit. If I click onto that commit, there's actually a link. You can see that the hash is right here, 19FEC48, and actually it's much longer than this, right? But I wanted you to see it one more time. And for people who were here last week, some people need that too. All right, so I'm going to take this link and I'm going to put it up on Slack. So I'm going to go to Slack and I'm just going to drop it in there. And that's the latest repository we're working with right now. It's up on Slack. So if you can't get to that, you can look at it, kind of see my files on Slack. Last week, what we did was we actually looked at our repository by going to my folder and double-clicking on my index like this. So this is what we had last week, right? And notice it says, COMP125, home, and I click the about, and it takes me to my about page. So I kind of made 2 pages last week, right? Again, if you weren't here last week, please see the video. And also, if I click my learn more, it also takes me to my about page. And also, if you notice, if I kind of scrunch this up here, it's responsive, right? It's a responsive website because I'm using Bootstrap. If I click this little hamburger, that's what this thing is called, I get the 2 links, and I can navigate here like I would do if I was using a mobile phone, right? So I can go to home, and you can see that, I'm here now. I'm at home, and if I go to about, it shows me my about page. So that's kind of when we talk about responsive, we want to respond to different viewport sizes. A viewport being the phone or tablet or desktop that's viewing your website.
So by responsive, you adjust yourself to
it's like adaptive.
Screen size.
Yeah.
So it's adaptive. Yeah.
Responsive. It's actually called responsive web design, right? And if it's not something that I'm going to cover here in this course, you should already know about it from user interface design that you took already, web interface design. Okay, so are we good with this? Are we good to this point? Anyone not good? Okay, new tools, right? I did all this.
Okay, for example, you need to push files to different repositories. across different users.
Uh-huh.
How do you
How would I point?
configure the user?
I wouldn't configure different users. That's not what we do. We push it to the repository and they pull from it. GitHub won't know. You have to tell GitHub. Well, that's a topic for another day. It's kind of out of scope. All right, so okay, so we got this little file, and I've been double clicking on this thing, right? And then I got to double click and refresh every single time. Wow, what a pain in the butt. Imagine really developing this way. We don't really develop this way, right? I don't want to double click every time I want to update the page. What if I update something? It's not going to show me my update. Okay, please don't get mad, but we're going to install Node.js, right? But this is what we do, all right? So Node.js, I'm just going to go to this in a second. And then if someone asks you from another class, what? You did Node.js? We're not doing Node.js. We're just using Node.js, okay? So Node.js, here's nodejs.org. We talked about JavaScript on the front end, which is your behavior part, right? And then there's Node.js, which uses JavaScript on the back end, okay? JavaScript on the back end. So I'm going to take this little link here, and I'm going to put it up on Slack. Here it is. I'm just trying to prepare you guys for the real work. So Node.js, I put the link on Slack. If you look at it, right, we want to download the latest version of Node. Now, if you are a Windows machine, you want to do two things at this point. One, I want you to close out of your Visual Studio Code, all right? So close out completely, okay? And also close off your command prompts, please, at this point. If you don't do this, Node.js will not be installed properly, right? Or you'll get really weird results. If you're using the machine in front of you, if you don't have your own laptop for whatever reason and using the school machine, you already may have Node installed, and we'll check that in a second. But what you want to do is there's two versions of Node, right? And again, we're using this only for testing purposes. We're not actually developing a Node application this semester. That is for another course, another day, right? But there's two versions. Notice there's this version here and there's this version here. This is the long-term support version, which we will not be using. We'll be using this one, the current version. I want to click on this one. Notice the latest version is 10.1.0. And if I was just to show you my version, I could just do node for it to be working properly, -- version or -v, right? I can see that my version is 10.0.1. Like since last week, it's already gone up 0.1, right? And we talked about Node.js, and actually web services is one of the most difficult platforms to develop on because of this continuous move forward as we develop. Now, you may argue that, hey, why don't we just use the long-term support version? Yeah, you could, and I'm not going to get mad at you. Either one of them is fine, but I want to use this one. So when I do this, I'm going to kind of download the long-term version. I'm just going to put this as it's an MSI, an executable or an installable inside my downloads, right? Notice I have other versions here. Save. And when I install Node, it's just another tool that we're going to use. It's just another tool. When it finishes installing, what I want to do is I want to install it. I want to go through the installation process with you really quickly. And when it finishes installing, it's taking its sweet time.
It takes a while.
Here it is. So the installation process doesn't take long because it's fairly straight. One thing to note about Node, it's built on top of Chrome's V8 engine, which is this JavaScript engine that did exist at one point. And I like how it's just really starting for me today. I don't understand why. But let's just go to File Explorer. It's probably still starting up. There it is. Number one. And the second thing is it's built with C++, right? So this is actually an application that we're loading locally. Node is one of the most popular servers nowadays from the back end, right? So why am I downloading it? Why am I installing this? Because from a development perspective, we need a development server locally to test with. You can use Python if you really want to. Don't recommend. You can use PHP if you really want to. Don't recommend. That's a lot of installation for like JavaScript files. And this is another one. Node is the third version, the third way you can do a local server. And the reason why we want to use a local server is because we sometimes will have cross-origin issues if we don't. And don't worry if you don't know what that means. Okay, I'm going to click Next. And I already have Node, and I'm doing this. Okay, I'm going to click accept. I'm going to click next. I'm going to click next. I'm going to accept. I want all of this, including where it says add to path, right? That's why we have to close down our command prompts. And then click next and install. And I'm going to say yes. And then within a very reasonable time frame, it should install Node.js locally. This is just a development server that we're going to put in on the back end. Actually, right now, it's just a system, a framework, a Node.js framework. There's nothing. We're going to use one command to get what we want.
We didn't select anything.
Just next, next, next.
But if we select them, doesn't matter.
You should not select anything. Just press next, 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 and that's it.
So we reinstall.
Did you select stuff?
Selected.
Well, all right. So now notice it says removing files, because what it does, it removes my old version of Node, right? That's what it's doing right now. And it's putting the new version of Node. And it's also attaching Node.js to the path so I can use it on my command line. That's why I close my command line down. If you don't have, you still have them open, it will not run. You'll have some weird things with Node, and you won't be able to do, Node.js. Again, this is just a tool that I'm using, right? So when this is finished done, then we'll be going to the next part. So what is Node? Node is like this ecosystem, if you will, right? It's another way of creating web applications on the back end. Okay, and again, yours might be slower than mine or faster than mine. I'm using a 1 terabyte SSD with a one i7 and 16 gigs of RAM. Yours might be a little slower, it might be faster, I don't know. All right, when this is done, and it looks like we're almost done, now we can test it. And the way to test it is to go to command prompt. So I'm going to type in CMD for a second. And now you should be able to do node -v. And you should get the latest version, 10.1.0, like me. However, you also might get something like node is a not recognized command, right? Or an unrecognized command. If you got that message, it's because there's two possibilities. One, your installation didn't go so well. Two, you left your command prompt open, like I told you to close it, and you didn't do that, right? Or three, you need to adjust your environment variables, which we'll not do right now. If you're a Mac user, this is not the way to install Node. Please do not install Node through the website. It's better to use Homebrew, right? So if you're a Mac user, and probably there's no Mac users in here, but let's just say if you want to use Homebrew, Node.js, Mac, right? And it says how to install Node.js and NPM on Mac using Homebrew. This is a pretty good installation guide from 2017, right? I recommend it. I'm just going to copy this if you're a Mac user and put it on Slack. So for Mac users only. All right. All right, so now we've got Node and we've tested it. We know that it's working because we've got this 10.1.0 thing. And now Node is useless without installing stuff within the ecosystem, right? So we want to use something called NPM. NPM, which stands for Node Package Manager, right? And the Node Package Manager, what it does is it goes out to the web, grabs stuff, and installs it where you tell it to. Okay, so before we do anything like this with NPM, there's a couple things to note. NPM, this Node Package Manager, allows you to grab modules from the web. So if I type NPM on the web, and if you look up there, here's NPM. It's called the Node Package Manager, and you can search for all kinds of packages. For example, one that I want to use with you is called light-server. And if I type it, you can see that there's a light server. It's made by this guy, John Papa, which is pretty awesome, right? This guy is a very popular web developer. He's actually done things with Angular as well as other development. He's actually one of the proponents of Visual Studio Code as well. So where do I go? I went to npmjs.com. I'll put this link on Slack for you guys. Here it is. There it is. We have this on Slack for you. Okay, npm. And then I typed in light-server and pressed enter. And what this does is it shows you a couple things. So this is the package that I'm looking at, light-server, right? And if I click onto there, you can see a couple of stats. Here's your weekly downloads of this package, 22,000 downloads a week. Hey, guess what? This is an active, useful package that a lot of people like, right? And that's pretty cool, right? And that means that people use this light server package a lot. 22,000 downloads is pretty cool. All right. So this is what I want to do. And the way to install this is in your command prompt. I want you to install it globally. So there's two ways to install packages on Node. One is globally and one is locally, right? We want to make this a global installation. So we're going to go npm install. Install is the command for installing packages. And then -G for global. That's the switch for global. And then the name of your package, which is light-server. And if everything goes well and if I press enter, it's going to install light-server locally on my machine, but in a global context. So I can use it from any command prompt. And it does its installation dates. And when it's done, when it's finished, finally, it should be done. By the way, you can make your own packages for Node as well, right? People add Node packages all the time because it's an active community. Okay, good. We've got light server. If I've come to this point, there's only just warnings, no errors, you're good to go. Okay, so I've added my package in there. Okay. I know this might be some other things, but you're good, right? Okay. All right, cool. Yes. That's what I just did. I just installed it. One line does it all. npm install -G light-server. I don't know what you did. So I will check it later. Yeah, we'll check it later. All right, so I've installed npm light server, right? And now I want to use it. Okay? I want to use it. So I'm going to just X out of here. And I want to kind of do that thing I did last time with my Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code. Here's my Visual Studio Code. Yay! Right? Here it is. And notice I have my little PowerShell right here working already, right? This is, by the way, if you didn't get this and you got something blank, you can always get the latest, the folder you want by dragging and dropping again from your desktop to Visual Studio Code. You can do that again, right? And then you should get this. If you didn't get this right away, you can get to it by right-clicking and going Terminal, open Command Prompt. And now what I can do is, which is a beautiful thing, I can do light-server from any command prompt like this. It's a new command I've installed. And if I press enter, it should launch your default browser like this. LITE-server. LITE. Let me just stop this here. Light-server like this. Okay, are we good? When I do that, it brings up my default web server like this. And why do I care about this? Why do I do this with you? Why did I spend all this time instead of teaching you JavaScript today? Because it makes a great development environment, guys. Here's an example of this. What if I want to change hello world, to hello COMP125, right? And I want to do it immediately. So I can go back to here. And if I go back to index, and if I go to my Jumbotron here, and instead of saying hello world, I want to say hello 125, hello COMP125, right? And I press save, Control S. Guess what? It's there. Immediately, it updates your browser for you. You don't have to go refresh. This is why I do it. So you'll see immediate results. Every single time I save something, I'll see my results immediately on my browser, right? This is called browser sync, where I'm syncing up my browser with my terminal, right? And we want to work this way because it's the fastest and most efficient way to work. If you had multiple monitors, I would have, on one monitor, I would have my browser. On the other monitor, I would have my code. And as soon as I type something on one, I would see it immediately on the other side, right? Like you would in any other platform. Are we good so far? Notice that I'm running a little server now. Take a look. There's a little node server on the bottom that's basically telling me all my commands, all the things we've seen, right? If I want to, I can set up another terminal down here because I want to leave this working, and I want to set up another little terminal here to do other work. And I can always switch between them. So here's terminal 1, here's node, and here's terminal 3. That's it, right? It's just extra term. I can have many terminal windows as I want. Okay, cool. So what did I do? Notice what it did is it detected a change in my index.html. Because I updated my index.html, it says, hey, I had a change. Here I'm looking at Git. I have a change. I've changed my display for. It's showing me that I went from hello world to hello comp125. That's what it's showing. That's the change it's showing right here. Okay. Now I don't care so much about this change. I'm just telling you what it is if you look there. All right, what about if we switch back? Let's switch back. So hello world. Hello world. And we'll make an exclamation mark at the end. Hey, save, switch back, boom. Immediately, right? We want to work this way because it's going to save us time. That's what I'm doing. I'm actually front loading all the time we're wasting right now. I'm wasting time with you right now doing this. So that way later on, we don't have to do this again. Okay? Questions so far about Node and NPM. For you guys, all you have to know is that Node is an ecosystem that's running Node or JavaScript on the back end, right? And we're using NPM, the Node Package Manager, to get libraries or functionality or whatever I want. Here's something else we can do with JavaScript, and you're going to get really mad at me. Remember I said you're going to get really mad at me? I know you're going to get really mad at me now, all right? Remember last week, we did the long way, and I went to Jquery and downloaded Jquery by hand, and I downloaded all this stuff by hand. You can use NPM for that. So let's show you that, right? So in scripts, notice I have this app.js, and I have this lib folder, right? And inside there I have Bootstrap and Jquery. Don't get mad at me, but I'm going to delete my lib folder. Please watch for this one. Don't do it yet, all right? So I'm going to delete this thing. So delete. If I did this and I move this to recycle bin, I just deleted my folder, right? And if I did things properly, right, it says you'll need to provide an administrator privilege. Sure, just do it, right? And it says, are you sure, right? Yes, do it. Do it, I said, right? Delete permanently, right? Do it. Okay? Huh? And let's refresh, right? Well, hold on a second. How come I still see it? Wait a minute. I went down here. Hold on. I went down over here. Is it gone? Right? If I go to scripts, lib is still there, man. What the heck? It didn't go away, right? Here's lib. There's scripts. Well, what happened, right? Well, it prevents me. I'm kind of in a lock situation, right? Because I'm looking at this thing right now, and I'm also running my node. Here's node right now running. We're still pretty good. So what if I deleted it from my operating system here? I went to lib, my whole lib folder, right-clicked, and I just pressed delete. And it says, you need permission to perform the session. Try again. Why? Because I'm actually physically using this thing, right? And no matter what I do here, I'm just showing you so that you don't get mad at me, right? It says, you need permission because I'm trying to get rid of this lib folder, and it's really long, right? And I keep doing it until finally, whew, it's gone. Why? Because I'm running. And now I got a problem. I got a problem because it will never run. Like that other files, if I go back to my comp125, right? I've broken my refresh, right? I've actually broken down my terminal, my node. If you look at it, right? They're all PowerShells and it's broke. If I try running light server now, try that again. If I try running light server now, it'll run, but it'll say it broke. It'll show this. This is my hello world. Why is it showing this? Because I have no Jquery and I have no Bootstrap. I just deleted them, right? I'm just showing you just in case you get to the screen. If you see the screen, you're like, why don't I show Jquery and Bootstrap? It's because they're gone, right? Or because you never had them in the first place, right? Remember, there's 3 things you need to run Jquery, or sorry, to run Bootstrap. You need Jquery, you need CSS, and you need Bootstrap. And I don't have none of those. So how can I get them back? And how can I do it in a way better way? So on my PowerShell now, I'm going to do npm init. And npm init, what it does is initializes the npm, the node package environment. It creates something called package.json locally. All right, cool. And what this does is it runs this little wizard, this little batch file. I'm just going to accept everything. I'm just going to press enter, 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 enter. Okay? And for you guys, it doesn't matter. Yay. So what it did by doing that was it created this package.json file. Package.json file describes my application. I don't really have an application. I just have like one little file, right? But now I'm going to add in Jquery. Remember, that's a dependency. I'm going to say npm install Jquery, right? -- save, right? As a dependency. Remember before we had to go to Jquery, download each individual file, put them in place, and blah, blah, blah. None of that. Press enter. It's going to go grab Jquery. And don't worry about these warnings. I'm using the latest version. That's why. And when it's done getting Jquery, it's going to put it inside of a folder called Node Modules. See this folder right here? It's not done yet. It's still downloading, right? But inside this Node Modules folder is going to be all of my Node modules. And one of them is going to be called Jquery. It's getting it still. It's not done yet. That's why it's got this really weird, funny thing. All right. So npm, here's what we learned. npm can be used to get some packages to make our tools, if you will, to make our job a little easier as developers. And when this is finally done, right? When this is finally done, one day, then it should get Jquery. I don't know why it's so slow right now. But yeah, it gets everything and puts it inside Node Modules. Notice that there's 147 files it's getting right now, right? Or pending changes. There it is. And we got an error. Don't worry about the error, right? It says, Jquery, no such file or directory name C, users, Node Modules, Jquery, This is related to npm. Be not able to find a file. Complete log of this, Okay, so notice it did put this in here, but it messed up. Don't worry about it. Try it again. So we're going to just do a CLS. Try this again. Hopefully it'll be better this time. Yay! It's probably a connection issue. Here at the school, by the way, we get blocked a lot. I don't know if you know that, right?
So this installation is for
Jquery.
Per folder. You install it for each folder.
For each of my project files, you mean?
Yes, yes.
Yes. All right. So that's Jquery. So Jquery took 2 seconds. Now let's get Bootstrap. npm install Bootstrap. -- save. Done. Bootstrap is now there too. Wait, let's get Font Awesome too while we're at it. Font-awesome. -- save. Done. And if you want to do it all at once, by the way, you can do it like this. npm install Jquery. I can do it again, by the way. I can do it as many times as I want. Jquery, Bootstrap, Font Awesome. All in one step. -- save. It's going to get all those 3. Done. Now we've got them, but we have to link to them. Okay? So one part is getting them. And what I mean by getting them, they actually physically download and they're placed inside of the Node Modules folder right here. Right? And if I refresh, sorry?
You have to delete the folder to do it?
No, I just deleted it because I don't need it anymore. I know, because we're running. Right? Okay, so you can leave it alone. If you want just to install it, you can. So notice I have 3 subfolders inside my Node Modules folder. My Node Modules folder has Bootstrap, Font Awesome, and Jquery. Those 3 things, those 3 libraries, I downloaded with npm, which is a way faster way of doing it and way more efficient than going up to Jquery, downloading everything, putting it into the files, checking it out. It took us like a long time to do that. This took us like 2 seconds once you have npm, the whole ecosystem installed. So again, I wanted to introduce this to you this week compared to last week, because last week was just already too many installs. And this is the last, no, I'm lying. This is one of the last things we're going to do, right? In terms of installations. All right, now that we've got this, that's great. You're going to say, fine, that's great, Tom. I'm happy that we've got this, but how do we use this inside of our files? Well, remember, in my index.html, it's pointing to something that does not exist anymore, right? My lib files, scripts, lib, jQuery, blah, 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 it doesn't point to the right things anymore, right? Because there is no lib folder. We just deleted it, right? It was in scripts. And there's no lib folder in scripts anymore, just my app.js. So these 2 things are no good, right? We're going to redo these things from scratch, and we're going to copy them into my About page. And then I'm going to put this up on GitHub. And the same thing with this one. This is no good either. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I never see this kind of like.
This? It's because you haven't installed. Maybe it's because you don't have Git installed properly on your machine. If you don't see it, it doesn't matter. This is just a signal that I'm basically modifying or adding. That's what U means. Okay. Don't worry about it. It's not that important. I may have an extension that you don't have. All right. I want to make a link. I'm going to make a CSS link, right? I'm going to link to something, right? What am I linking to? Definitely not styles.css. It's going to be inside my node modules. So I'm going to start typing /node modules, right? Inside my Bootstrap, right? Inside my CSS, right? And I'm going to pick bootstrap.min.css. That's the right path.
So the same files are available.
Yeah, it's just that it's inside of node modules instead of lib. All right, save. Then I'm going to go into my JavaScript section, and I'm going to put new JavaScript connections. So here's one. Script, yes.
So which file was it we were linking?
I'm so sorry. I'll do it again.
.min.css.
Yeah, so it's node modules bootstrap dist distribution. That's what it stands for. CSS bootstrap.min.css. Now we need jQuery. On the bottom, I'm going to link to jQuery. So script source. I'm going to link to jQuery. So / right node modules, right. I'm going to go to jQuery this time under dist, and then jQuery.min.js. Okay, so that's the new link to jQuery. And then script, source, node modules, and then bootstrap, right? And it's got to go bootstrap dot, instead of dist, JS for JavaScript, and bootstrap.min.js. And that's the link. All right, so that should restore everything we had before, but using Node, not by using direct downloads. And some of you may say, wait a minute. We can also use something called the Content Delivery Network, which is not using any local files whatsoever. You can do that. We're not going to do that in this course because I want you guys to develop locally. But you can do that. And well, maybe I'll show you near the end. Okay, so cool. We've got our files. And, well, are we still running? Are we still running our little command prompt? Let's take a look. So if I go to open command prompts, you can see that I can also see my PowerShell number 1. I got my PowerShell number 2. I got a bunch of command prompts. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I'm just going to run my server now, so light-server. And if everything goes well, we should see everything running again. Okay, that's what I wanted you guys to get to. Yay, it runs. But wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if I had my home and about pages have some? By the way, my about page doesn't work. Look, it doesn't work. If I go home, it works. But if I go to about, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work because guess what? Inside my index page, I changed all this stuff, but I didn't change it in my about page, right? So I guess get a copy paste. So I'm just going to do one of these. I'm going to copy this one because I'm not going to type it all by hand. Go to my about page, replace this one for now. And we're going to figure out ways of doing this so that I only use one set of pages for my navigation, not two. But for now, it's okay. And then these two files have to be changed, right? So these two, my about, be changed, right? And if I save it, right, and I go back, and if I go to about, you can see now that I'm good. Immediately. I go back to home, I'm good. About, I'm good, right? Okay. Let's put this up on GitHub. So you have everything that I have. So worst case, you couldn't follow along. I was too fast for you. Just download mine, right? That's the worst case. So how do I do this? Notice I got 332 changes. That's a lot. Where the hell does all those files come from? Wow. We use Node. And this is where there's advantages and disadvantages. Node, remember we just got these slim files for jQuery. We just got 2 files. Well, using NPM, we got like 40 files, right? Because it gets everything, right? So if you look at, to see that, if you look at node modules, and if I go to jQuery, I have all this extra stuff here, right? And the same thing goes with Bootstrap. Bootstrap has all this extra stuff here, right? And I even have Font Awesome, which we didn't do last week, which has all this stuff. So all this stuff is being added up to about 332 files. So what does that mean for people who've never seen this before, who are coming from last week, and you guys are like, oh my God, I'm ready to pull my hair out. Tom is making us do something that's crazy. Don't worry. I'm going to go down PowerShell here, and I'm going to clear the screen. And now we're going to do everything from scratch. We're going to push all these changes up to GitHub for the first time with command prompt. So we're going to say git add dot, which adds everything. Takes a second because there's 332 files, right? And this stages everything. Notice over here now, there's still files, 311 files, right? Now, git commit minus m, right? And we're going to have, instead of an initial commit, we're going to name our commit. We're going to say moved to Node and NPM. This is what we really did. And we're going to move to Node and NPM ecosystem. Before we use Jquery and everything, locally. So all I'm doing is committing all those changes, right? So these are all the changes committed. That's my commit message. And now I'm going to push everything to GitHub. Git push origin master. And if I press enter, it's going to push everything to GitHub, which is only still about 1.17 megs. Very small, even though there's 300 files. Let's check and see if that's true. So I have 2 commits now, right? If I go back on GitHub, and if I look up here, and if I refresh, you can see now that I have 2 commits. And I have a bunch, I have content, scripts, and node modules. And I have a couple of more files, a package.json file and a package.lock-json. Why do I have those files? Because I'm using NPM. And every time I do a minus save, it actually saves these things as dependencies. So if I look at my package.json file, you can see that I have these dependencies that are listed. Bootstrap at 4.11, Font Awesome at 4.70, and Jquery at 3.31. So these are the packages that I've loaded in my application and their version number. That's all this thing is. So I've created a website, and NPM is used to get everything, and package.json is a manifest of all my external folders and external libraries that I've added in. Now you may say, wait a minute, we just started JavaScript and we're already getting to this advanced stuff. I don't understand, right? It's not advanced. It's just, you guys have never seen it before, right? And so, and I'm doing it. Some people may argue that, well, can't we do this later? Yeah, but then we waste a lot of time going to the individual websites and dragging and dropping. And I want you guys to get almost like a head start on downloading stuff quickly. Right? By the way, you can download any package almost that's available out there through NPM. And there's other package managers as well. One of my most favorite ones is called Yarn that I use a lot. I'll mention it, but I won't use it. So it's called Yarn. Yarn is not yarn like wool yarn, right? Like, I'm not yarning like that kind of stuff. I'm talking about Yarn, the package manager for the web, right? And this is another way of doing the same stuff we do with NPM. And notice what it says. It says node versions greater than 4.8, right? Or 5.7 or 6.2, and greater than or equal to 8.0. Any one of these things is fine, right? It's ultra fast. And what we do is we use it just like we do NPM, but it has other advantages. Okay, I'm not going to do that here. I'm just showing you that that's another package manager we use. And one of the older ones, I'm going to kind of copy this and put this into Slack so you can know about it. Here's Yarn. And there's another one that used to be really good but been deprecated, but I'll talk about it, which is, it's called Bower. That's the other one that was really, really awesome. But notice it says, while Bower is maintained, we recommend using Yarn and Webpack. I'm not going to talk about Webpack in this course. That's a whole other, that could be a course in itself, how to do Webpack properly, right? But Yarn and NPM are very popular. Bower was the other one. I'm not going to copy and paste this one because this one has been deprecated, all right? So they're all package managers. And when you guys go into advanced web programming, which is COMP125, one day, you're going to take that course. There's another package manager that they're going to use, right? They use another package manager called NuGet. All right, that's the other one that Microsoft uses. It's called NuGet, right? And NuGet is a package manager, again, that's used by Microsoft, right? So package managers, it's not a new thing. It's not even an advanced thing. It's something that you guys need to know about as web developers. So remember, we taught, this course is called Client-Side Web Development. It's not called JavaScript, right? So that's why I'm introducing this stuff to you now, so you understand how we get packages from the web. All right, let's do a little bit of JavaScript. So we've got our package, we've got node modules, and we have one more thing called Font Awesome. To initialize Font Awesome and to make it work, right, there is another style sheet you need to use. I'm going to make that work right now. So I'm going to add in Font Awesome. This is going to be after Bootstrap and before my app.css that I'm adding it in, okay? This is new. So I'm going to go link, and I'm going to put in /node modules. This time we're going to go to Font Awesome, and we're going to go to CSS, and we're going to go to fontawesome.min-css, right? Okay, now we've added Font Awesome, but we haven't really done anything here. By the way, I'm doing it in my index. I better do the same thing on my about page, or else it won't work. Because remember, anything we add in, we got to add into both pages right now. Okay, so what does Font Awesome do? Well, if you look at Font Awesome for a second, really quickly, and then we'll get into some code, hopefully. Font Awesome does icon fonts like this. So I can look for something like home. And you can see I want a little home icon font next to my home, right? Because it's more interesting than just like home. If I type home, it's like not as cool. And this is like a way better. You can actually add really cool little fonts on your website, right? To make it like awesome. So I want to add this font. So if I click on the home icon, it tells me the code that I need, right? It says, well, to make this work, you need this. Okay. That means that inside of my link, here's my link for home, right? So before my anchor tag, this is, I'm looking in the about page. Let's go to my index page here for a second. Here we go. So notice that in my index page, I have this home, and before the home text, all right, I want to put in this little I tag. So I want to put in I, and inside my I tag, I want to put a new class, right, of FA, right, FA home, right, FA large. What it is. So FA is Font Awesome. FA-home is the home icon. And FA-large is the size that I want. Okay? And that's how it works for icons. It's very simple like that. And notice I have to have a space in front of my home text, because if I don't, the icon and the text are going to be next to each other, right? And I don't want that. And if I press save and I go back to my index, that HTML, you can see that I got a little home right now. Make sense?
How can we have access to the thing gave us an error?
Your NPM give you an error? Okay, I'll go over that with you later. Huh? It's cool now, but never mind that it's cool. It's way cooler because even inside my hamburger, I still have the little font too, the little icon, right? Which is what we're used to seeing with the mobile app, right? We're seeing more of like icons and stuff like that. And there's a ton of icons you can use online, right? Okay, so we got our home, and I want to have an about icon. And if I look for icons that are like that, maybe what I want for my about icon is some kind of info, right? So I can say like type in info, and maybe I want like this little I to pop up, or you can use the question mark, like the question dash circle or info dash circle like this, depending on which one you want. I want to use this one, info dash circle, right? So again, if you notice down here, it's FA info dash circle, right? So if I go back there, so again, I put in I tag with a class of FA dash circle, FA large. And if I press save and I go back to here, you can see now that I got, oh man, what the heck? It's hard to see this one. Maybe that one doesn't work so good. Let me just go, oh, that's a circle. Info dash circle. It did what I asked it to do, right? Oh, info dash circle. There we go. Now again, see the difference? Look, I didn't put a space between my font or my icon and the about page. Notice that right here, if I go back, there isn't a space, and that's no good. So I want to put the space right here. And now there's a space. And now I did these changes, and I don't want to type them again, so I'm just going to grab these two links. But I got to be careful because this link here is active, and the other one is not. So I want to grab this link. Actually, I just grab this thing here right here. How about that? So I got to put this in my about page, right? By the way, I'm doing this on purpose to make you guys mad that we have to do this again and again. We got to find a better solution for this, right? Because this is not right. If I have to copy every one of my pages, I got to copy my navigation over and over again. That's a real pain, right? We have to find a better solution for this. CSS can do it to some degree, but if I go back now, if I go to About, you can see that that's live. And if I go Home, that's live, and I got these little fonts. OK, cool. That's font awesome. So now we've added those two things in. I'm going to go back and look at my terminal. And you can see that I'm going to do something like, OK, so I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m. We're going to say added font awesome. Here, git push origin master. This is going to push everything up. So now if you look up online, you're going to see that I have 3 commits, right? And there they are, right? Initial commit, move to node, and npm, added font awesome. Those are the 3 commits I have online. All right. So things I wanted to cover today that we didn't get to, but we're going to get to a next day after I've done all the heavy lifting today, is a couple things. One, JavaScript, getting into the real nut and bones of JavaScript. One is JavaScript is not Java. So if you think that JavaScript and Java are the same language or they're related in any way, you're wrong. They're totally different languages, completely unrelated. The only difference between JavaScript and Java is the Java part of JavaScript, right? And originally, JavaScript was called LiveScript. That was the original name of JavaScript. But it was much more popular. Java was a popular language, and they wanted to somehow connect it with this most popular language that was out there at the time. So they renamed it to JavaScript. Things you should know about JavaScript is case sensitive. Anything you put inside JavaScript, all the identifiers for variable names and all that kind of stuff, it's case sensitive. JavaScript is also data type insensitive. And what I mean by that is it's weakly typed, right? Which is something that developers hate. Because if I declare a variable as a number and then I declare it as a string, I talked about this last time, JavaScript doesn't care. It'll reassign the variable, the data type, from a string to a number, or a number to a string, or a string to an array, or an array to something else. And that really makes people mad because of errors that can come up, right? You think it's an array, but actually it's a string, and it still works because JavaScript doesn't care, and that's a problem. When you make identifiers, so variable names, these are all the reserved words. This is in our PowerPoint from last week. Okay, this stuff is important to know. That's why you can't name stuff with abstract, Boolean, break, and blah, blah, blah. All these things you can't name. These are reserved words, and every language has a list of reserved words. This is the one for JavaScript. Okay. We use the variable, the var keyword. Var is OK to use, but the latest keyword for declaring variables is not var. Does anyone know what it is? What's the better way to declare variables in JavaScript? Does anyone know? And why? How about that's the better question on an interview. Why would I use this other way of doing it instead of var? The key word is let, actually. And the reason why we use let is because JavaScript does something called, which is really bad sometimes, called hoisting. The heck is hoisting? Well, let me draw it for you. So to draw this, I'm going to go back to our concept board, right? We had a concept board last week, right, that we used. I kind of put the links up on Slack for us, right? So here's our concept board. I'm going to go to this one, and there's a bunch of stuff we did last week, some drawings people did, right? Remember this one? Just going to get rid of all this stuff of the board. We're going to clear the board. That's what we're doing, right? All right, and inside concept board, I want to add in this drawing. So imagine that, you know, we have, actually, see if I can draw a rectangle. That's better. So I have this, you know, this object here, right? Here's my rectangle, right? And let's suppose this is the scope of our function, right? And I have a variable. So I'm going to start typing some stuff here as well. So I have not just this, but other things in here, right? Like I have a variable. I have other things that I have in here as well, right? So let's say, for example, in this, I have some other, you know, object that's inside of this thing, right? If I declare my variable down here, what JavaScript does, this, let's say, for example, this outer blue, you know, rectangle is the whole document. Okay, let's just say. And in fact, maybe we can change this thing to make it a different color. So we'll make this color, instead of blue, we'll make it, I don't know, orange, right? And this right here is the variable. And we declare it way down here, right? When JavaScript goes through the document, it takes this variable and puts it to the top. That's what JavaScript does. Actually, it doesn't just do that for variables. It does that for functions too. So I declare a function in JavaScript or a variable in JavaScript, even if I declared it way down here, hey, stop trying. Then it goes all the way up here, right? This thing is called hoisting. It hoists the variable up to the top. That's bad. Why is it bad? Because it doesn't keep the order. And so what ends up happening when you use the var keyword in JavaScript, right, is you get some weird, thanks guys for drawing while I'm talking, you get some weird effects, right? You get some really weird effects, right? Because you think that the variable is being declared down here, but it's actually being declared up here. And that's bad. What let, the keyword let, allows us to do is wherever we use let is where the variable is declared. And that's how we expect it to be, right? So going back to our example, if I go back to my Visual Studio Code, and if I look at the code we already have, let's get rid of this for now. If I go to my scripts, and if I look at my app.js, I have this variable right here called title, right? And instead of var, I can use the let keyword, right? And let is supported in most browsers right now, right? So it's one of the ES6. That's ECMAScript 6. When I talk ES, I want you guys to know what it means. So if I say ES6, I mean ECMAScript 6, right? ECMAScript is a standard or a version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6, right? And the latest version, if I look at ECMAScript 6 features, these are all the new features of ECMAScript 6. However, one thing to note and be aware of is that not all ECMAScript 6 features are supported in modern browsers, right? So I'll be showing you the ones that are. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. All right, so let's go back to this for a second. Going back to this. So I can use let. And what let does, and please, when you make your variables for your assignment number 1, use let. Don't use var. And that's absolutely necessary. However, in the wild, when you go look at some code, you look at Stack Overflow, you're looking at other places, you're going to see var all over the place because it's still the ECMAScript 5, the older standard. Just replace var with let and you're good. Yes?
I thought let was more for scope.
That too. But I want you guys to use let all the time so you don't forget, right? All right, cool. So that's one thing that I want you to know. So that's a new thing for us this week. Let instead of var. var was the keyword to declare a variable. Also, we can also do this in JavaScript too. Look, this is okay. This is allowable too. This, my friends, is bad, right? This is bad to do this because what it does is it creates the variable title without the var or let keyword. We do not want this. This is a no-no. Please never do this, right? So how can we prevent this from happening? Because this could cause issues, right? Well, there is a preprocessor command that we can use. This is a little bit more advanced, but not too much. And you can use this in any scope you want. And you can use something called use strict. What use strict does is it prevents this thing from working. All right? Use strict. And we need to put this in. Okay, otherwise, it won't work. So use strict, if you don't want to know what that is, if I go put use strict like this, use strict, to understand what that is, right? Use strict is strict mode in JavaScript. And what it does is it prevents things, like for us by automatically declaring, declaring variables and so on, because this can also be bad. So example, you didn't really mean to make a new variable title. You meant to use the variable title that was up here somewhere. But now you just forgot to put let. And now title is not this title. It means some other title, right? So let use strict. We always want to use strict. This is strict mode. We want to turn strict mode on for us. Okay, so what did we do here? We accessed the document model, the document object model last week, right? And we got the title object, the title property of the document model. And we can see this by going back to our browser, right-clicking anywhere on the browser, for those people who were not here last week, clicking inspect, and then clicking console. Notice it says title is COMP125 home. If I go to about, you can see that now it says title COMP125 about. Wait, how is this working? Well, what happens is, because this app.js file is linked to both files, the only time it gets activated is when the file loads. So I have both my index.html plus my about.html, and they're both loading my app.js file. But they're only loading it when I'm asking for it to be loaded, right? And so when it loads, it reloads. It reloads this start method, right? Why does the start method load for those people who were not here last week? And what the heck is this funky stuff down here? This immediately invoke function expression, which is also an anonymous self-executing function, right? What it does is it basically says this. It says, whoa, hey, when the window loads, call this start method. That's what it's doing. Okay, back to this. A few more things before we go. So one thing is we can assign variable names with the var keyword. Yes, we can do it, but I'm asking you to use let. This is all from last week. Please never, ever, 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 I don't know how many more evers I can use document.write. Never, ever use it. Doesn't matter what the book says, right? Document.write destroys the content of your page, right? Because it writes to the document. Like it literally overwrites the document, right? So we never want to use this. This is really bad. Never, ever. This shouldn't even be part of the book. You can use this on certain, there's certain times when it'd be okay to use this, but I recommend never using it. Okay, I'm just going to skip through a couple things. Again, this is for your reading. I'm not going to follow along. Events. We talked about one event. We talked about the onload event last week, right? And unfortunately, it's not mentioned here, but there's a bunch of other events. The way events work, JavaScript is an event-driven language, right? So when I click something in JavaScript and I'm listening for that thing to happen, a thing to do something, as an example, right? I need to be able to hook into the object on my document somehow. So this is the one thing I'm going to show you today, and hopefully you can take this away today and remember this one. Remember that tomorrow we're going to do a little exercise that's going to be worth 1% of your final grade that I'm going to get you to put up on GitHub. So please attend. So I've got this, but on my index page, we have this. We have this button. And right now my button, what it does, it says learn more. My button has a class, button, button primary, button large. And this is a Bootstrap class just for the front end to make it look nice, to make it look blue. That's what it does, and big. However, I can add an identifier, an ID to my button, right? Like this. ID is equal to, and then the name of my button. For example, my About button. Okay, cool. So now my ID for this button is called About button. Okay. By the way, I used capitals. You may see it in other ways. In my app.js, okay, tell me first of all, can I search for my button every single time I load this JavaScript file? It's not a trick question. I want you to think about this. Can I? Yes. Should I? No. Why should I not search for my button every single time I look for this, load this app.js file? Why should I not search every single time? Because there's no button on my about page. The button only exists on my index page. So if I search for it every single time, I'm going to get an error. When I say search for it, I mean connecting to it somehow or hooking into my button. I want you to think about this as a hook. I want to leave you with this thought. So here's how it looks. I can declare another variable called about button. And I can make it that I can search for it. I can say that about button is equal to document dot get element by ID about button. Okay, I can do that. So what this is I'm looking at the document model. I'm taking a look at my document. I'm using a method called get element by ID, which means I'm getting a reference to my element by its ID. That's what that means. The ID is what I made, about button. That's the ID that I created, right? Now I'm getting a reference, an actual variable, like a address, if you will. I'm addressing my button. So my about button is of type HTML element. What I can do is I can create an event. I can say something like this. By the way, if I'm going too fast, it's okay. I'm going to talk about this next day, tomorrow. I can say something like about button dot add event listener, right? I can look at the click event, and I can say when the about button is clicked, I can just do an anonymous inline function that kind of does something like this. Console commands about button was clicked. And I type today. Oh. Okay, cool. So remember I talked about this being an error. I'm going to get an error here, right? Because it only exists on one page, but not the other. So in my index page, you can see that I'm in my about page right now. If I'm in my index page, it says, hey, no problem. When I click on my about button, oh man, what happened? How come I didn't, how come I, well, because I switched pages. That's the first thing. My about button actually switches pages right now. Let's make it so that it doesn't switch pages. Let's make it so that it doesn't do anything. So I'm going to put a no link in here. I'm just going to kind of put a hashtag so it doesn't go anywhere. Let's go back and try this again. So again, I'm going back to my home page. And if I click my Learn More button, it says About button was clicked. Yeah? Because I created an event listener, and I handled the event. I'm going to talk about this next day in the same line. However, if I go to my About page, error. There is no About button here, right? So it's looking for something that doesn't exist. It's looking for something that doesn't exist. So how can I fix that? Well, in my app.js, I know I'm getting my title of my page. I can say that, well, if my title is home, okay, do this. If my title is not home, don't do it. And it's better to create a switch statement. This looks something like this. Switch, title, case. And remember that the title that comes out is the title. And I don't know if you guys got to go. I know I'm running a little bit over time, so it's okay if you go. I'm recording this anyway. Okay. If you know what the title of the page is, COMP125 home, right? Oh, sorry. There we go. If case the title is COMP125 home, then do something. This is like you've learned before with switch case. However, if my case is COMP125 about, do something else. For example, just break for now. And what I can do is I can move this code into here. So that it only checks for my About button when I'm on the home page. But it doesn't check for it when I'm on the About page. Okay? Again, don't worry about this. I will explain this in way more detail tomorrow. But now if you look at it, I don't have an error in my About page anymore. And my home page still works when I click my About button. Okay? So we can use one file this way by creating a switch case statement that switches between the title. That's why I pulled the title of my document, between one title and another. And I can have as many pages here as I want. But, guys, this is very, very cumbersome. Imagine if I have 10,000 pages on my website. Am I going to switch 10,000 times? That seems unreasonable. And we'll figure out other ways to do this tomorrow. Questions around some simple stuff about variables. We talked about variables today. There's two ways to declare variables, var and let. Let does not allow variables to be hoisted. Var, JavaScript hoists that variable to the top. We don't want that to happen. And so we can use let instead of var for most cases. We also talked about Font Awesome today and how to add Font Awesome and Node and NPM and how to use Node.js as another tool and NPM, the Node package manager for the web, to grab new libraries and include them in our application. Right? Yes.
Node.js with all the possible options, it just slows down the thing.
Shouldn't slow down anything. Shouldn't slow down anything. So I don't know why, but let me just put this up online and we'll talk afterwards. No, shouldn't. All right, so I'm going to put this up. So the things that we finished off here. I have added some more script. So I updated my app.js. I'm going to go into my command prompt. I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and I'll say updated app.js, and then git push origin master. And that'll push everything up to the master branch. Guys, thank you so much for paying attention. Tomorrow we get together. I'll answer your question afterwards. Tomorrow when we get together, be aware that we're going to do a little exercise that I'm going to get you guys to hand in based on what we're doing. And remember, we also talked about assignment 1 today, which is due 2 weeks, approximately on Friday, June 1st at midnight. Guys, thank you so much, and we'll talk later. For those people who want to stick around, I will answer questions.